you see Oprah during the launch? So her best friend Gail went into space.
Okay, so I am way behind on that whole thing.
So Oprah's best friend is Gail something.
I know Oprah's best friend is.
Well, by the way,
we all know who Oprah's best friend is.
That's what I was gonna say.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom in the 90s. I know who Oprah's best friend was.
Okay.
What I'm saying is I'm not caught up with the space women thing.
She went to space with Bezos and Katy Perry, somebody else.
Yeah, but they were there for like 20 minutes. What was the whole thing?
I don't know.
They went up into space and came back.
But how far?
Girl power, baby.
How far?
Like they went to the moon or just halfway or?
I don't know. It's some Barbie thing. I don't know.
Okay.
It is but people literally were like, "Can we send Katy Perry back
to space?" Yeah.
So,
welcome to The Cover, where three Hoosier friends judge books by their covers and movies by their trailers.
That's right. I'm Brett, here with my fellow Indiana natives, Remington and Marcus, ready to dive into the stories that keep us up all night and occasionally put us to sleep.
Whether you're a bookworm, movie buff, or just here for the witty banner, we've got you covered.
Each week, we'll dissect a different book or movie, sharing fun facts, hot takes, and moments that make Marcus cry. Spoiler alert, we're not experts, but we're definitely opinionated.
From literary masterpieces to blockbuster flops, nothing is safe from our snarky reviews and wild tangents. Who knew Hoosiers could be this entertaining?
So grab your popcorn and reading glasses because we're about to embark on a hilarious journey through the pages and screens that shape our lives. Or at least our weekends.
You're listening to The Cover. Let's get the show on the road before one of our kids wakes up.
I think actually Marcus is the one with the what's new.
Okay.
One of our 9 questions.
But can we get back to the incentive? What'd you call it?
He's going to get to
I'll
it.
get back to it. I'll get back to it. This is not happening.
Wait.
No.
Wait.
No.
First question. We'll number the questions for everybody. First question
No,
is
then
what's new, right?
then I've got to remember.
No, you don't have to number them. Just give people the idea that...
Yeah. We do 9 questions.
Yeah.
You know, if you're new, we do 9 questions.
We do 9 questions. We don't charge you to interview or anything.
Nothing. We don't charge you.
Have you ever heard of any other company charging to interview? I thought Sample Kit's deposit was bad. I mean
that makes sense.
That's what I'm saying.
I think it was instead of, hey, let's actually interview people. Let's just
weed them out.
Oh my god!
I'm assuming.
Do you get your $10 back?
Or maybe at that time, maybe it was economically driven, where so many people was interviewing. It was like I only can deal with people who are willing to spend.
No,
I just think it's ironic that you brought that up and didn't make the connection that it was $10 to join the Klan.
That's true. It's a good point.
I'm just saying.
Oh,
interesting timing.
What's your VA's name?
Why?
What's her name?
Why would you ask that?
What's her name?
Gab.
He wants
Gab.
Cut out.
Gab. This is where this podcast starts. This is the moment. This is the moment. You know how I knew that I was reminded how quick of a turnaround Passion was, because what you chose was good. There were so many awesome, hilarious options, but there's just no time. You had to pick.
Quick.
I weighed it, and I liked what it was for what we were doing.
Yeah,
we can always go back, by the way, if you have one that you think is good. I also don't want to mislead people and think the whole episode was hilarious, because it definitely wasn't like
I liked it. I thought it was good.
I haven't listened to it yet, so actually, how would you know? You don't listen to the show.
Once I heard the opener, I'm like, I know there was.
From Fishers.
I was like, I know there was something else really, really, and then I just randomized. And I was like, oh yeah, that.
Is Riley's screen name online Housewife from Fishers?
I have no idea.
37.
I'm like the 18. Least online person here. Anyway,
that's true. What's new, Marcus?
So, I get in my car the other day, and I press the little button to turn on the engine, and it just sounds...
The ignition? Are we talking about the ignition?
The ignition button.
All right,
this is
Brett.
a good start to
this is a great start.
This is a good start, and you'll understand why. Press the ignition. It doesn't start quite right, but it starts. And I'm like,
that's
I'm like,
worse.
I'm like,
That's worse.
Interesting. And then I go to my first meeting, and then I do it again, and yeah. Go to my third meeting, come back. oh, it starts up okay, but not quite right. And I think before I go home, I better make sure that I go by the store and get this battery tested and probably get a new battery.
Yeah.
Because I know that's what it is at this point.
Okay.
My final meeting is like a drinks meeting, hanging out. Mm-hmm. I leave the place.
This is in Indy or in Columbus?
In Indianapolis.
Okay, good.
I leave the place and I press the ignition button. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went one meeting too long.
Yeah.
So it's raining outside.
Where was this, by the way, physically?
Books and Brews, actually.
You didn't text me for Hector?
I was at Books and Brews.
Hector would come to you.
Oh, he would? Interesting. Yeah. Well, someone had jumper cables, and I knew that's all I needed. So I got a quick jump, drove straight to AutoZone that's right by my house, and the guy insists on testing my battery, even though I know that I need a new battery. And we're having people over that night, and it's raining, and I need to get this steaks cooked and everything else. And so I say, no, it's fine. I take the battery. I'll replace it tomorrow. No big deal. I know how to replace batteries. Get up the next morning, play some basketball, go get the battery, go to take off the clamp. I'm a little aggressive with the ratchet on the clamp. So instead of doing it, just loosening it, I lose the little nut. Remember that for later.
Not good.
Then I go to the other clamp and I loosen it and it will not come off. It is stuck. Like very stuck.
Like your dad tightened it with his dad's strength?
It's just very stuck. And I'm like banging on this thing. I'm trying everything I can to get off. I end up FaceTiming my dad because that's what I always do. He's like, yeah, man, you're just going to have to keep trying.
You're going to have to find someone stronger. Call Remington.
And so he's like, you're going to just have to keep trying. So finally, an hour later, I get this thing off. Okay, 2-minute job, get this thing off. Then I get the new battery in, and then I remember, crap, I lost that nut. Can't find it anywhere. So I drive to AutoZone. Surely they've got a 10-millimeter nut because they replace these batteries all the time, and this has to have happened before, right? Wrong. They don't have a 10-millimeter nut. They have some universal thing, and I'm putting that in quotes for everybody there. And I look at it, and I'm like, that's not 10 millimeters. And he goes, yeah, but it's universal. I was like, I don't think this is going to work. And he's like, it'll work, man. Trust me. So I take it home. Do you think it worked?
Why did you take it? Oh, because you couldn't get there? Because it wasn't...
Because it was the only thing they had, and I just really wanted to make it work.
Yeah.
Did it work? No, it didn't work. So I drive to Lowe's. Have you ever tried to find one 10-millimeter nut at Lowe's before?
I haven't tried to find anything. The guys know exactly where everything is.
No.
You just ask somebody.
No. I asked. They did not know.
They could not find it.
We looked.
Ace Hardware. Ace. Those guys.
You should have drove to
real
Northwestern.
I don't know where the Ace is, but I agree with you.
There's one in Carmel.
And there's one by the Goldfish at Fisher's.
Fisher's?
Yep.
Dude,
Yep.
that's where you need to go next time.
Next time. Noted. I get this little 10-millimeter thing, and 2.5 hours later, I got my 2-minute battery replacement.
So what was the total time?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
Can you imagine how angry I was?
I can.
How many times did your kid walk by and go, Dad, what are you doing? And how angry did you get on a scale of 1 to 10?
I was very angry.
Very angry.
Very angry.
Scale of 1 to 9.
For me, this is way less manly. Whenever I'm putting together furniture,
yeah,
they know you are to get out of this room and do not open that door.
I make a mistake every single time I'm putting together furniture, and then I've got to go back and like redo it.
Whenever I pay Nate to put together furniture, I get very annoyed if it takes too long.
I think that's what I'm going to do from now on, because every single time I go to put something together, I think to myself like 2 hours in, I'm like, I think I could have just paid for this and it would have been worth
exactly.
it. If Nate's not available, TaskRabbit. Highly recommend.
I put together my girl's bunk bed by myself, which took an entire day. I think it was like 8 total hours just to have done it for the man card.
Yeah.
And that was it. That I proved to myself and my wife that I'm capable of doing man things, and now I pay for it.
Makes sense.
I feel okay about that.
That's fair.
I think I've reached that point.
Well, welcome
so let
to
this podcast be known. I can do man things, and from now on, I'm going to just pay for it.
Many men, 3 men on this podcast called The Cover. I'm your host.
That should be our new intro because we were looking at doing the new intro.
Yeah.
Men.
I'm your host, Brett Wiggins. As always, to my left is
Marcus Mangus.
He knows how to put in batteries. And sitting to my right is Sir
Remington Ramsey.
We answer 9 questions every week from one of your favorite books or movies. Sir Remington, our first question, what are we covering?
So
second question.
I'm just going to give a preface.
Yeah,
what was the first question?
What's new?
Oh, yeah. We already answered that. Marcus did.
I answered it. It was long.
It was a long story. It was took about as long as it took him to change that battery.
Almost.
I just want to let everyone know I get very animated in the back of these covers, and I'm by no way trying to glorify what this says. This is just how I read the back cover. Just the Roaring '20s, the Jazz Age, was also the height of the uniquely American hate group, the Ku Klux Klan. They hated blacks, Jews, Catholics, and immigrants in equal measure and took radical steps to deny them American promise. And behind their takeover of the Heartland and the West was a charismatic charlatan named D.C. Stephenson. Within 2 years of Stephenson's arrival in Indiana, he became the Grand Dragon of the state and led the group out of the shadows to be celebrated at local churches, family picnics, and town gatherings. Judges, prosecutors, governors, and senators proudly proclaimed their membership. But at the peak of Stephenson's influence, it was a seemingly powerless woman, Madge Oberholzer, whose deathbed testimony revealed his secret cruelties and finally brought the Klan to their knees. A Fever in the Heartland marries a propulsive drama to a powerful page-turning reckoning with one of the darkest threads in American history. This book is A Fever in the Heartland, Timothy Egan, the Ku Klux Klan plot to take over America, and the woman who stopped them.
Can't believe
Fantastic book.
this was 100 years ago. Still
literally
shook. Yeah, still shook.
And the
over
book came out in like last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, what's crazy to me is that this book came out last year. This magnitude happened in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I'm driving through reading it on the way home from 2 hours north. So I'm passing Kokomo, Noblesville. I'm going through the chapters. Mm-hmm. They are vivid, Muncie, of where this all took place right here in central Indiana.
Two things I couldn't stop thinking. One was based on the stats provided in this book. If you're white, you're from Indiana, you're listening, you probably had a great or great grandparent that was in the KKK.
I asked my dad. I asked him because my grandpa.
You asked your dad. Dad, were you in the KKK?
No. My dad was born in the early 60s.
Good. Okay. All right. Got it.
But his dad
Yep.
was born in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I asked him if, he remembered his grandpa or any of his uncles or anything that talked about it or said that they were in the Klan. And he said not that he was aware of.
Yeah.
Ku Klux Kids.
I mean, yeah, there was even that.
It's the first time I heard about that.
Yeah.
Dude.
Had you ever even heard of that?
The kitties?
Kitties.
No.
No, but I'm not surprised.
I mean, aren't you surprised that you hadn't heard about that though?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a black eye.
Well,
of American history.
As our listeners know, I probably, if I did hear about it, forgot.
But okay, so
not just American history, but like Indiana history. Like this was rough.
Yeah.
World history. History.
This is a weird thing to be the best at, but we were the best at this particular sport.
The Alabama of the North.
Yeah. So and then the second thing I kept thinking about is, I'm already like, think about this type of thing. Like, I'm like, all right, so there's things 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago that are completely obvious to us now that were just stupid. Like, why did we do that? Why were we doing that? Whatever. Little stuff. But then there's also big stuff where it's like, is there anything I'm doing today where I'm like,
yeah.
What? Did I just take that for granted because somebody else did it or because somebody I trusted?
Totally.
Or?
Because of how widespread and how messed up it was and how no one saw it.
Yes. Or yeah, and it's like, well, all these teachers, pastors, doctors, these great people of our society are a part of it. How bad could it be? It scares the crap out of me. Yeah. Two things I couldn't stop thinking about. What'd you know going into it, Marcus Remington?
I mean, by the way, without getting too political, there's a lot of people that think we're like living in times, and they're trying to make certain connections to.
It was hard to read and not think about.
I didn't think about that until the very last.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about it kind of at the end.
At the end, and then when Marcus said that.
Yeah. If Marcus hadn't said that to me before, I don't know how much I would have thought about it before the end, but I was definitely...
Well, they do a really good job of making the book literally about the history of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Not
but
trying to draw...
But you weren't making connections while you were reading it? Because I was, the whole time.
No, well, you read it twice.
No, the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
And specifically because of the timing of when it came out? Because I don't think he wrote in a way that was like, this is happening again.
Not specifically because of the timing of how it was made. But I think because although I will say conservative, not Republican. I'm conservative, not Republican. Although I voted for Trump, my biggest concern during the campaign that I shared with people was around the way that they were shaping the immigration stuff. Mm-hmm. And I agreed that we had a problem, but I didn't agree with demonizing people. And I felt like what was happening is that every problem that America had was an illegal immigration problem. And I understood why they were doing that rhetorically, but it really bothered me. And I shared with people that that's where my antennas were up and still are, quite frankly. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of this stuff.
And I think this book is a good reminder that you could say all you want. I'll do what I need to do to get voted in, and then I'll do whatever. It's not that easy. It's not that easy.
From the book's perspective?
From the book's perspective, so many of these politicians sided with the KKK in order to get voted in. And then, but at that point, now it's like, well, you got to listen to what I say.
Yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into it for sure.
So,
what I know going in, not much. I mean, I was literally at Barnes & Noble one night, and I saw this book, and I was like, well, this looks like something we should cover.
You saw this separate from Nate?
Mm-hmm.
Because Nate was talking about it.
I don't remember Nate talking about it.
Oh, that's funny. He was reading it.
I posted this in our group chat when I was at Barnes & Noble with Jessica one night, and Nate was jumping on it.
This is 2 times by the way now, because Marcus just said that the new Karate Kid looked really cool. Nate brought that up a month ago.
Well, yeah, he did do
Inception.
that. I do remember when he did that.
Yeah.
I just was.
You know what though? In our friend group, in all seriousness, like we share so much that it's really possible that you shared it. Nate doesn't even know where he got it from, and he actually heard it from you originally.
Plus,
that's very possible.
Plus, I'm a big fan of like taking credit for things that were other people's ideas.
Totally.
Yeah. Especially when they're good.
What are we drinking, by the way?
You got to get one right.
We are drinking.
I haven't had a sip yet. Is it good?
It's great.
I like it.
Really?
Yeah. We are drinking from the encyclopedia. It is called
Poison Girl.
Poison Girl.
Not Poisoned Girl. Poison
Girl Old Fashioned.
I guess we'll get there.
I felt like that was
you'll hear about Madge.
But yeah, that's all I knew. I mean, and I knew the KKK had been big, but I think I was thinking about the KKK after this.
Well,
like that was in Martinsville and that was in Elwood and
in
like
the 50s?
Yeah, in
60s?
the 50s and 60s. That's what I was thinking about.
Well, what's funny is
I
like
had no idea how this story.
I didn't even realize this was kind of the second stint of the KKK.
Yeah.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Second big major one. What's interesting is when one of us is ahead on just education on a topic, whether we're reading a book or into
He's
something.
talking about him and Marcus, by the way, just to be clear.
You'll get there sometime.
Yeah.
Brett will do come like a biography by Biggie or something. You're gonna be.
I would read that. I would read that. It definitely won't be an autobiography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Actually, he spit. It could be from his, like, you know how they made a book out of the tweets from Naval Ravikant.
No, dude.
It could be a book made out of his freestyle.
Biggie Duets
His
is
freestyle.
all music that he didn't actually make, but was all studio recordings that they then took and made music out
All
of.
his
Wow,
samples.
I'm learning
So
something.
good.
Those samples.
It's one of my
so he
favorite
took
CDs.
unproduced samples
Correct.
and
Correct.
did his people that are running his.
So there's actually a lot of controversy because P.
I
Diddy.
just picked Biggie randomly. By the way, this is fantastic.
P. Diddy obviously owned all that music, and then he was like, I
runs his
want
estate?
to honor, be big, and then they're like, oh, you're just.
Diddy owns his estate.
I don't know that much, but I would not be surprised.
Man,
You know, Michael Jackson owns all of the Beatles.
He doesn't own anything now.
He did. So I heard a story that someone had mentioned, the Beatles are the best or the most popular, had the biggest, and the next day he bought their entire catalog.
That's fascinating. So you just think you heard this, or this is like verified?
I
Is there a blue
feel-
check mark next to this?
I feel very confident
Michael Jackson
did own all of the Beatles
Really?
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is news to me.
Yeah, he really did.
Who was bigger, Elvis or the Beatles?
I think the Beatles being international.
Were bigger. I think the Beatles were bigger.
So.
Were they though? Because Elvis did all those movies after he came back from the war.
So I listened to a podcast. It was actually Malcolm Gladwell's podcast about Elvis movies. They were 99% of them were absolutely horrible.
Yeah, but they still watched him. It didn't matter. It's like soap operas.
I think it hurt his cred more than helped.
It doesn't
I don't
matter.
think you're
I'm just
right.
saying widespread.
You don't think I'm right in terms of
Not
they
with the
weren't all
target
bad?
audience. No, I think they were bad. I've seen
It
many
was-
of them.
Okay, you're saying it was the same millions of people still
Yeah.
that were just watching because it's
Yeah.
Elvis. You can do it. I knew that.
Have you guys seen the Elvis?
It's very good. We
Yeah.
should watch that.
It's really good.
We should cover the Elvis movie.
Mhm.
This is
Very,
like
very dark.
a Bohemian
What if
Rhapsody
we did like a
style.
month?
I
Of,
haven't seen that.
What if we did a month of just like biopics?
Mm.
That'd be kind of
I
fun.
really need to see Bob Dylan movie. You
It's
talked
good.
about that.
Complete
Mm.
unknown.
Mhm.
Nate raved about this book, begged us to do it, said it was great, so I knew that, and I knew based on what he had told me on our car rides to recording on Mondays that I would be shocked at just how deep it was in Indiana.
What's interesting, what I started to say is, like, if one of us is ahead on a subject and we're into it, we'll share the most interesting thing about what we've read so far. And then me, as someone coming in late, is waiting to get to that point, thinking the book is primarily going to be about that. So specifically, the one thing you told me is that the way he grew the KKK in Indiana was by recruiting poor preachers to spread the word. And so when I was reading this, I almost felt like that thing was going to be the center focus of the book, and it really wasn't. It was just it was a fact. The center focus really was the Grand Dragon.
It was what Marcus had read earlier that day.
Yeah,
It was like the top.
Yeah, but it was so
Yeah.
fascinating
Yeah.
to me. I was like, well, that's got to be a big part of this then,
Yep.
because I didn't know that. And what an interesting, fact. But it's like this book is from start to finish about the rise and fall of one man who
Yeah.
deceived everybody, and on top of it recruited people and just turned them blind.
And
to
once you
his-
start listening it or reading it, it is hard to stop.
it's hard to stop, and it's hard to listen to at the same time.
I felt like chapter. It was. I'll obviously get to it with my rating, but it was good. Chapter 16 is where it got great. Like enter Madge, and I'm like, okay, now
the whole trial part, it could have been a freaking Grisham novel.
Yes.
That's exactly what it reminded me
amazing.
of.
Who was the black dude that came and the pinnacle of the movie and put his hands on the Grand Dragon and said, "This man."
Yes.
Oh yeah, the porter.
I can't even believe that is
yeah.
a real thing. I can't believe that happened. And it was like such a quick part of the book, you could have missed it. But like that was where I was like, "Oh, this is Grisham." Like this is like the scene.
I mean, I was kind of rereading, skimming through it this week. I was just like, this could be a Grisham novel.
That section reminded me of not. It didn't remind me of it, but it reminded me of how I read the last race in Boys in the Boat.
Yeah,
where like I remember those
you felt
4
like it
or
was
5
like
chapters
cinematic. It's like
just bang 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 bang
it
bang.
was like music going on. while
Yeah,
you're reading
yeah,
it.
that whole end of the that whole trial was the same way.
I feel like this movie, if it was made into a short story or a movie, it would have the same eeriness and feel
They gotta make this a movie.
of the Ted Bundy, which was also hard to watch.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Was Zac Efron?
Did you watch that? Yeah, it was Zac Efron.
That was really good Zac Efron.
It was.
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's eerie.
So they do a miniseries.
It's like a 4 or 6 episodes.
Man, I
I
love
think.
those.
All of those like COVID serial killer ones that came out.
The People versus O.J. Simpson is one of my favorite of all time.
That was what kicked it all off.
Yep.
I feel like
Cuba Gooding Jr. Well, that's on FX.
And it was like 3 different things. It was like the ESPN documentary came out,
Yes.
the 30 for 30,
Yes.
which was all about like what was happening in sports during the OJ. Then the dramatized Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yep.
Was, and then also the documentary came out. 3 different things within like a couple months of each other, and it was just like.
And then I
OJ.
didn't read it, but OJ also put out a book. If I did.
That was long before that.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay.
Yeah, that was long
Got
before
it.
that.
I feel like he passed away not long after all of that.
It was a couple years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wait, we need to verify this.
He's still alive.
He's listening to this right now.
He's still alive. It's going. Marcus, slam poetry.
Yes, verified.
9 words. Verified. He did
Died
pass
of
away.
cancer at the age of 76.
Recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year.
30-second synopsis. Marcus does 9 words.
All right.
I do slam poetry. Rem gets the girl. Here we go.
Sings the songs and gets the girl.
Actually, that's a hidden gem in this.
Oh, can't wait to hear that.
Mhm. All right.
I just don't know. I don't know.
You don't know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Okay. Well, we will get there. The Klan explodes in Indiana. Can anything stop it?
Rem was so convinced you said 1 word instead of 2, and you said in Indiana, or he thought it was 3.
If I'm being honest, I wasn't paying attention at all.
Oh, good.
Like I normally am during the 9-word synopsis.
Yeah, I never get applauses.
Here's your
Everybody's just waiting
Dude,
on
Here's your
what?
snaps.
This-
As I proved last
Everybody's just
episode, it's
waiting on
not
Brett.
that hard.
Is it weird? The snaps trigger me
Oh, really?
when people.
Oh, because of something that happened.
just-
Because
It's
I
just
feel
like,
like that
come
was it was originated during a time like the 1% Wall Street thing. Remember when they were camping on Wall Street? We are the 99%.
And they were snapping.
Yeah, like to applaud, they would like
Occupy Wall Street?
yes that.
I'm going to start calling it Camping Wall Street.
In coffee shops.
Camping Wall Street.
Camping.
I feel like
can't
it's
talk
a
about the
coffee
homeless
shop
people or
way to
camping?
applaud.
Uh,
Like a hipster coffee
like
shop
at
way to
slam
applaud.
poetry.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I don't know, man. It gets me. Anyway, get ready to snap.
Of all the people you can be angry at, Occupy Wall Street people is like the
It's
least
so
on my
funny that
list.
He's like triggered.
I don't know. They were like angry about big corporations, and then they had their iPhone and they were using it. You know,
And then they just realized camping sucks.
Dude, it was
sucks.
rich kids that were like
Yeah,
needed a cause, and like that was the least bloody. So
Keep
they're like,
going.
all right,
all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna poop in this tent.
Hey, people are belongers. People love to belong to
Camping
something.
Wall Street. I'm gonna
These
name this
movements
episode
take
Camping
over.
Wall Street.
Well, no, but some girl was like, "All right, not leaving." Well, can we
Hold
go
on.
shower?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Is there a Starbucks close by?
You won't mobile deliver?
It's the same people that when they were like showing people at rallies screaming that Trump got elected, and then the camera would go away from them, and they were like checking something. The camera would come back. Ah, no!
Did you see Oprah during the launch? So her best friend Gail went into space.
Okay, so I am way behind on that whole thing.
So Oprah's best friend is Gail something.
I
or
know
other.
Oprah's best friend is.
Well, by the way,
we all know who
my
Oprah's
mom
best
was
friend is,
also,
Brett.
That's what I was gonna say.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom in the 90s. I know who Oprah's best friend was.
Okay.
What I'm saying is I'm not caught up with the space women thing.
She went to space with
Yeah.
Bezos and Katy
Okay.
Perry, somebody else.
Yeah, but they were there for like
Oprah-
20 minutes. What was the whole thing?
I don't know.
They
But
went up into space and came back.
But how
Oprah-
far?
Girl power,
How
baby.
far?
Like they went to the moon or just halfway or
I don't know. It's some Barbie thing. I don't know.
It is but people literally were like, "Can we send Katy Perry back
to space?" Yeah.
So,
I
but
saw
no,
that.
but Oprah's like watching, and she's kind of watching. She's like, "Oh," she looks down, and she's like, "All right, well, that was cool." And then she sees the camera looking at her, and she's like, visibly shaken now. Oh my
No
god!
way.
Yeah, it was great.
Speaking of that, so I took the girls to the Pacers game. This is the part.
Yeah.
This is the part where Kelsey like turns off the
Game
episode
one, yes,
'cause we're, like,
sirs.
so distracted. But we went to the first Pacers game. I take the girls.
Located
and
in Indianapolis, the same place the original trial was supposed to be.
That's right, about a block from where the Grand Dragon lived, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's true.
We're at the
Pennsylvania.
Pacers game. The cheerleaders are bringing up little teddy bears, and I make the mistake of holding Piper out to get one of the teddy bears almost past Charlie. She gets the teddy bear, and I sit down. We're celebrating. I look at Charlie, completely dejected. I'm like, awesome. How much cotton candy will make up for this?
Way to go, Dad.
I know. And so I'm trying to make it special for them. Well, what was funny is there was a lady who really wanted to be on camera dancing at every timeout. Okay. And she's sitting right next to the girls. Well, I see a cameraman focus completely.
He's getting ready.
He's getting ready, and he's looking directly at us. I'm like, okay, Charlie, let's go. I bet it's gonna happen this time. They start dancing, and sure enough, I film it, and Charlie lights up when she gets on the jumbotron.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've been going to a handful of Pacer games every year, and she's always looking to get. And it's easier to get on the jumbotron at Fuel games because it's like 6,000 versus 20,000 people. Her night was amazing.
The only thing that would've been
Reed's
cooler-
like an expert at getting on the jumbotron.
Really?
Because he's got that crazy hair and he just starts flipping it around.
Nice.
And,
That is
It's
easy.
pretty fun.
So when you talk about it, when you get back in the car, is he like too cool for it, or is he like, yeah, it was awesome? Like,
I think that he thinks it's really cool that he got up there, but he doesn't even see it because he's
oh really?
doing
Do you ever
the
film
hair
it?
flip. I mean, listen, he's committed. He's like me,
Yeah.
man. He's committed.
worried
Like,
about the-
he
Doesn't matter. The fans are happy.
He's entertaining the fans.
Yeah, that's right.
The only thing that would have been cooler is if Charlie, when she was on the jumbotron, took the bear out of her hands and threw it back. Throw it back. All right, slam poetry. Here we go.
We should do that for opening day next year. Rookie of the year.
Throw it back.
Incentivizing recruiters, slippery slope. I would know. Enter DC Stephenson, deadbeat dad, fast talker, white supremacist, alcohol-induced raging womanizer, rapist. I think we found our villain. Pastors, teachers, and politicians are members. How bad could it be? Indianapolis, Noblesville, Kokomo, and Muncie all paid up those $10 member fees. While South Bend was the home
All
of the
places Brett's lived.
that's
It's true.
100. That's 75% true. Never lived in Noblesville. While South Bend was the home of the Golden Dome, and them fighting Irish Catholics sent the Klan right back home. Enter Madge. Is she about to save the day? And to think, a 29-year-old girl really brought down the KKK.
Nice.
Wow. He just snapped for himself. I'm triggered personally.
What made us stop and think? Lots. Plenty.
We already started talking, but I'll tell you what. Just the intro to this book, it sets the whole thing up. It basically tells you what it's going to tell you.
Very much like a movie where like it
And-
puts you right in the middle of what's like the peak of what's happening, and then it goes back to tell the story.
So are things that are like with movies that are great, I love twist endings, but with things we already know the ending to, I'm even more
well,
dedicated
I was
to it.
telling Marcus this. Like, we know that the Klan eventually gets disrupted and loses somehow, but we don't know how. And
That's true.
about halfway through the trial, I'm like, this dude's gonna get off.
I thought he was.
I
Yeah.
thought, he's gonna die. Like, we're gonna find out that he just died last year or something like that. And I think the book was pretty gripping at that point because there's a lot of details I did not know.
It is surprising that he didn't find a way.
I think it's unfortunate, frankly, that we've never heard this story. Honestly,
Yeah.
like it's
What?
unfortunate.
How? So I was thinking about this. It's pretty nasty, right? And
Yeah.
you think about what's happening in public schools right now. We talk a lot about that. The three of us have our kids in classical learning in Christian schools, and it's a completely different form of education. But regardless of private versus public, I don't know that anyone that I was raised with or my own education did an appropriate job of really teaching me history from the important facts. Like I found out way later about things that I should have probably known earlier. But I don't know how you give details like this.
Well, that's the
to
reason,
fourth graders.
That's like the main thing that drew me to the school that we're at now, is that I went in and I saw a group of fourth graders in history class, and they were learning things that I didn't learn until college.
Like what?
And I was sure that I didn't learn them
Like
until
what?
college.
Like
It was history. I don't remember the specifics.
like civil rights.
I don't remember the specifics.
But like, would a fourth grader learn about like what actually happened with slaves that ran away?
I can tell you that Reed is. I mean, Reed is the stuff that Reed is reading
from school.
Yes.
Okay.
The
He's
books,
a sixth grader.
sixth grader. The stuff that he is reading is very tough. Like,
what are the sources?
Has the N word in it. Like,
is it fiction or is it?
I think some is nonfiction and some has been historical fiction that has been read for a long time.
Yeah. So our favorite
and then
books.
they went and visited this house that was from the Underground Railroad, and I mean, it's pretty serious.
So historical fiction, like our favorite books that we cover on this show, would you prescribe that to? I mean, I think
I would let any high schooler read this.
High schoolers, yes. I think, it should. This should be assigned reading over some of the stuff I read.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to remember why Emma was important for me to read.
What'd you read?
Emma?
Nope.
Do you remember Emma?
I don't think I
Pride
read
and
it.
Prejudice. Like, same.
Oh, Jane Austen.
Jane
Emma.
Austen. I think she wrote Emma.
It would be hard to go, all right, we've got 12, let's call it 13 years kindergarten, to select important books for them to read. And the arguments that could be started over what's the most important on the fringe would be hard.
It would be
hard. really hard to choose.
I agree. It's just, when you read this book, it's hard to say, like, how did I not know about this?
And do you go deep or do you go wide? Or do you go, hey, we've got experiences
I knew
with our
that the
community.
KKK existed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the KKK had a big presence in Indiana. That is it.
I did not know that it was significantly more so in Indiana than in... I didn't know Indiana was any different than
I didn't know that we were a national player from
Indiana,
that perspective.
I mean, Indiana has drama back to the settlers. I mean, the clearing of the Indian, the Trail of Tears, like those kinds of things. Like since the foundation of Indiana, there's been drama. But there's drama all over the country.
Yeah,
like it's not.
I mean, this
it's not limited to Indiana.
No, but I think
we're not exempt.
Like I just went on this trip to IMS today, and IMS does it for Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They do this for fourth graders because public education, they teach Indiana history in fourth grade. And so IMS invites fourth graders to come to IMS all the month of April, and they did a really cool presentation and stuff
When they do Indiana history for an entire year, do they set aside American history, or do they kind of put Indiana history at the center and talk about what's going on in America?
Oh, I think it's Indiana specifically.
Wow!
Yeah.
So you spent a whole year,
just
learning.
I mean,
Indiana
don't
history.
you remember doing that?
No,
we definitely did. We had a whole fourth
You
grade
said
field
public.
trip. It's a big deal. I was
So they're
in
doing it in
public
private.
schools when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I was not.
yeah. This was it was a big deal. You remember doing the fourth grade stuff?
I remember lots of things, not that.
Okay. Well, it was a big deal.
What do you remember about fourth grade?
I remember
he was making out with girls.
That was fifth grade. I remember fourth grade. Mr. Rust, one of my favorite teachers of all time, actually. We were supposed to stay with him. We were going to do a test, and we were going to have him as our teacher, fourth grade, fifth grade, and sixth grade. And I don't know if he just didn't know what he was getting into, but we didn't keep Mr. Rust. We all went to another class the next year, and then he took the year after us 3 years in a row. So I think we had some
Not a
rough
great
kids.
class.
We had some, Bryce and Steven, who I was supposed to be in the talent show with. Yeah.
I'm not saying that you necessarily cover
They got
this
suspended.
in fourth. You don't necessarily cover this in fourth grade.
Yeah.
But there should be room for this at some point in my education, and maybe it's just on me. That's fine, but I mean,
yeah. At what point do we collectively, as a society, say our kids are old enough to handle and understand an element of hate crimes? Like, who decides
a
that?
freshman in high school could read this.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying my kid is 8. At what point do I give her any knowledge at all that she can comprehend and do something with this?
I think that's the issue with saying, hey, this grade, because it really is case by case. It's like,
I understand that, but like when
things.
you're talking about a classroom and one kid knows something and then tells all the other kids and you haven't gotten out in front of it, now you got a problem. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's what I just don't know.
Like if you're not the one that told your kids?
No, if one kid who has one perspective of the thing starts telling everybody there's no Santa Claus, now you have all these different like parents who are trying to like fumble and figure out what to do about.
Yeah, we try very hard to make sure our kids don't tell people that.
Yeah, we have a rule. We don't talk about.
I don't
talk
care
about
that, but
I'm just saying that because we don't do Santa Claus,
I know
we try very hard that our kids don't tell other kids that.
Yeah, and I don't.
You don't care?
I do not care.
Where do the presents come from?
Mommy and Daddy work very hard, and I want the credit.
You want the. It's good.
I'm not encouraging them to ruin everyone else's life.
Anyway, the intro is fantastic.
Yeah, sets it up. Sets it up well.
That's how far we've got.
you know what you're getting into.
What else made you think, gentlemen?
The Grand Dragon ran the state. He was the law, even though he wasn't elected to any official status. Had the White House phone direct line to the president, and they made mention of how important it was that phone was in a place where people saw him making calls frequently. Mm-hmm. Like that was what was. He
important. Would even make fake calls as they were there.
That was intimated at least.
Yeah. I had no idea the KKK also hated other groups.
I did know that, but
I did not know that.
The one that I kept forgetting to look up, and maybe you guys know this, is why were Catholics thrown in there?
Immigrants.
Because most immigrants were Catholics.
Yeah.
But not all. It's a weird...
The European immigrants that were coming over at the time.
So the majority of Catholics were immigrants.
Yeah, so if you think about it,
which makes
when
sense.
America was founded, it was the Protestants that were coming here.
Correct, Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, that's just fact.
It was we'll say Protestant.
Yeah.
And then...
But they call it Christian.
And I understand, but are you making a differentiation between Catholicism and Christian?
No, I am not. They were.
Okay.
Because the KKK was a branch of Christianity. Like that's the way
kind of.
That's how they weaseled their way.
They said that they were white.
Like
Christ. America is white. America is Protestant. America, we want native-born people here.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous because we're literally a country of immigrants.
Yep. Right.
But then what's happening is all the turmoil going on in Europe, and you've got a lot of people from Europe moving here that are now Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And that, plus the slaves moving up the former slaves now moving up from the South into Indiana for the factory jobs and things. Mm-hmm. Right? And then... Was
it, so I know you're putting this together, but was there any element of it that where the Catholic almost membership, the way that Catholics worked and synced with one another wouldn't allow for the breach of the KKK because they already had their rules. They already had their, what I'm trying to get at? Like, was it harder for...
They're already their own cult? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, if you want to go so far.
I'm not calling it a cult.
Not cultish, but yeah, they already
belonged.
They already belonged. They already had their system of beliefs, I guess, is what it is. Like,
I don't know.
I think it was more about, I think it was...
He preyed on poor Christian Protestant churches of 20 people or less, whereas Catholic churches had more money because they belonged to a core Catholic group.
I think it had more to do with the fact that Protestants and Catholics, especially at that time, were more at each other's throats, mm-hmm. right? And we control what goes on in this state. Mm-hmm. This is a Protestant white state.
Right.
you can live here, but it's going to be a Protestant white state.
Mm-hmm.
And the more Catholics that come here, the more Catholic
Immigrants.
it's going to get.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Wow.
It was especially probably a problem with the drinking.
Right.
You know,
this happened in the Prohibition, which was a key factor in a lot of this growing. 22 to 28 was the heyday of growth.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I got some fun facts that I just wrote down.
About Prohibition?
Yeah. I mean, some really interesting things that you just never thought of, like Walgreens.
Walgreens.
Did you guys catch that?
Yeah. Blew up.
So Walgreens at the time, and I'll find it, Charles Walgreen grew from 9 stores to 500 stores over the course of the Prohibition because you could legally buy a pint of liquor for medicinal purposes every 10 days.
Yeah.
And that's
Good luck doing that in Indiana.
the single biggest growth of anything during the Prohibition that I've ever seen. And what an interesting, like, you're buying, and they obviously were buying it to abuse it, but it's a pint over the course of 10 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm guessing you'd get 20 people to be buying you pints.
Yeah.
And then you're paying
for it.
them,
And, yeah, it's a business.
There's a
Yes.
black market for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a
Like,
legal way to get it.
Would you go get your pint so that you could sell it to somebody for 10
Take a
times more?
profit. Yeah. Yeah.
Rem would have had a
business
rolling. Dude.
Business is a booming. medicinal poison girl
How
old
about
fashions.
how about just the way that this really caught me? So just the way that they recruited people. So we talked about them.
315,000 Klan members in Indiana.
Yeah, at one point it was one. I've said this already on the podcast, but at one point it was 1 out of every 3
Men.
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 That doesn't even count the women group that they started.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Keys.
white men in Indiana, right? But the way that they recruited them was a couple of things, right? Or many different things. One was the churches. They would go in and they would pay this pastor, right?
Mhm.
And then the pastor would be saying good things about the Klan. Their rhetoric, though, or even the way that they went about it, they would, as they were coming into this town, did you guys catch this? They would like send somebody a letter. And they'd be like, "Are you a true American?" And that's it.
That would be the first thing.
And then there'd be another thing. It's
Yeah.
like, "We're watching you."
Yeah.
And it'd be like a checklist.
Sure.
And then they would come to him, and they're literally like priming the pump,
Yep.
right? And the question then becomes, like, are you American or are you other?
Mm-hmm. Which was early, but then later when they gained all the momentum, now they were bullying farmers and bullying people into it because now they had the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, you don't even have to join us because you're with us. You just need to join us because we'll literally shoot your cows unless you give us $10.
Yeah.
Which, did you guys look up how much $10 was back then?
I'm sure you did.
I did. Thanks for asking. $10 was in 1925 was roughly
$250.
close, 175 to 180 adjusted for inflation. But here's what's interesting. Like, whenever we do this, how much was it worth at the time? You also have to take into context what it could have bought, because due to inflation, things don't cost the same either. So
Right.
like a nice this is what $10 back then could buy you. I love ChatGPT. A nice men's suit, 100 pounds of flour, 50 movie tickets at 20 cents each.
Let's go.
A week's worth of groceries for a family was basically what they were giving up as farmers, and a lot of them probably weren't doing well.
That's such good context, because reading it, just going right over it, $10, you're like, cool, bunch of $10.
Yeah, or even
fees.
$150
Yeah, call it
today.
$180, you know?
That isn't really giving you good context,
I mean,
because
it's not my grocery bill,
$180 is not a week's worth of well, I
it
guess
might be
I guess
for
it
like
is.
a family
Depends.
of 4 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I
It's
said
been a while.
Might be. I don't know.
Yeah, been a while.
No more cottage cheese, kids. No more pineapples.
It seems like every single person we read about or that we learn about that wants to get super, super powerful always ends up deciding, okay, last step is politics. I've either got to control it or I've got to be involved in it at some point, and then it's like the beginning of their demise.
Was he smart? DC Stephenson, was he smart? Was he a smart man? Was he intellectually, like, did he understand politics to sit at those tables?
He understood people.
But that's what I'm saying. I know that much, and I think that much is obvious. He understood people. He understood, and he also threw big parties.
He understood leverage. He understood people.
Boardwalk Empire.
Understood. I haven't watched that. No.
It's tough at times. It's pretty brutal. It's basically this, in dramatized form, but it's like you're street smart or you're politically smart or both. And the ones that were both were in politics. Those were like the presidents, the senators. The book opened with 15 senators and 75 in the House were in the Klan.
Yeah.
In the 20s. 15 senators, 75 in the House. That's crazy. That's just to control anything. He was pulled over, and the sheriff looked at a card he had that basically was stamped with a wink, like we were in control, and they let him off.
Dude, it was his the horse
thieves.
The horse thieves.
Horse thieves patrol.
Yeah, he's like, I'm somewhat of an officer.
See, that's
Wasn't
the kind of
laminated.
thing, though, that's the kind of thing though that was brilliant. Honestly.
Doing something.
So when
for
you
it.
ask
And by the way, I want to be
was
really
he-
clear. We feel gross calling this guy brilliant, like we do, but it's reality. He did some really shifty.
Listen, he was in his early 30s when he's doing all of this.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like you don't want to. I'm not trying to give him credit.
Yeah, right.
But what I'm saying is like in 4 years he went from 0 to like hundreds of thousands of people.
And almost worse than 0, because he came
Doing-
from Texas. He got
and then Oklahoma.
he
and then-
traveled north.
Yeah.
And he kept getting found out, and like he would screw up.
He
and
was
he'd
swindling
leave.
people the whole time.
Yeah.
Kind of like
What's the name
that
of-
serial killer that
What, I was just trying to think of his name. What's his name in Devil in the White City?
Oh yeah, H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, it definitely gave me thoughts back
because
to that.
he wouldn't pay people back.
Yep.
He would do these things.
Yeah.
It was very similar to
Marrying
You
multiple
could in
women.
the 20s. You could and Holmes was in 1890s. So for a
30, 40
really
years.
long time, you could travel state lines and basically just start a new life for yourself.
that. Yeah, he just shows up in Evansville one day
Yeah.
and becomes something completely different. And to be from nothing to I am the law in 4 years, like it takes some serious balls.
Yeah.
And some know-how. Like he knew how to persuade people, how to lead people, quite frankly. And whether it was by coercion, he did coerce many of the different people, but he also knew what it was, what message it was that was going to resonate with the people. And he really drew that out of them.
And remind me, did he actually believe in what the Klan was doing to
No, he
start?
didn't
Or was he
care
like,
at all.
hey, dude, these membership fees, this is my ticket?
Yeah, he just knew that he could make money.
Yeah.
I think he cared more about the group that gave him the most power and also fueled his hate. And it wasn't just minorities he hated. He hated everyone except white men. So I don't think it was necessarily...
I don't think he cared at all.
Yes,
I think he cared about one thing and one thing only.
himself.
Yeah.
But I think you're a group of society of people that all agree that I am the most important person, and that's how you get there, right? Like, is it in a group of narcissists?
The KKK?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Not the way the messaging was that they were delivering, and that's part of what I was getting to.
So you think he's a narcissist and he used the KKK to rise to power?
Yeah. Okay. Page 26. It says.
I'm not arguing with you, by the way. That might be right.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Here, listen to this message. All right. This is from a reverend. The Klan. This is the reverend giving this message. Right. The Klan is not against the Negro, but against social equality, he said from the pulpit. Not against Jews, but against only the Jews who are trying to gain control of the world. Not against Catholic, but opposed to their systems. It's time for the scum to be thrown into the melting pot, and the invisible empire will do the skimming. Right? Now,
Who said that?
a pastor,
Yeah.
Reverend Vic Blair, in Bloomington on a Sunday morning.
Easy on a Sunday morning.
I'm just...
What does that have to do with his
that's
narcissism?
But this is the message and the rhetoric that he used. He took the fear that they created of, wow, this world, this Indiana that we moved to, this freedom that we have is going to go away because of all of these people that are moving here and that are going to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I don't want them to, it's not that I don't like them, but they've got to, things have to be our way.
Mm-hmm.
Because our way is better.
Chapter 23 confirms what you're saying now that I remember, because I'm looking through my notes, and it said after 6 months in jail, he cared nothing about the Klan and only about himself getting off. And that's and jail was cushy for him, by the way.
Yeah.
Home cooked meals, women stayed over, like it was not jail.
Well, that was during the trial.
That was during the trial.
Afterwards, it was real jail.
Yeah, and he complained about it all the time and lost a bunch of weight. And yeah. He just wasn't happy and wasn't comfortable.
See, I can buy that. I can buy that he was a narcissist that used it, but I also think that you have to somewhat believe in what you're doing to say the things that you do. And I mean, unless
I don't think he does.
He doesn't at all. You don't think he hates... You think he also hates just everybody, and he just uses...
No, I don't think he hates or loves anyone. I literally think he was just like, how can I get the most amount of money and power possible?
What do you think, Brett?
And what vehicle can I use? And the vehicle that he found at that specific time was the KKK in Indiana.
I think...
/ the Midwest.
Seeing that 315,000 other white men in Indiana were... passionate enough to sign up, be official members of the KKK, I think it's fair to assume he probably shared a couple of those beliefs. But I don't disagree that I don't think that's why he really went for it.
Yeah, but okay, we could say that, but like he would rail in the Fiery Cross and in his speeches against alcoholism and against alcohol and everything else, while probably being drunk.
Oh yeah, he was drunk. He was slurring his speeches. They said.
And against the black man, because he's going to get liquor and he's going to do all these terrible things to your women. Meanwhile, he's doing the terrible things to women. He doesn't care about any of the causes that he's espousing. What he cares about is the power that cause gives him. And he can shift.
It can't be yes and. I don't know. I mean, I guess I understand. We're splitting hairs at this point. What I do know is that we've, in books past, not done a good job of explaining different sections, and I think you, Brett, should do that real quick.
Yeah.
Because now we're coming on. So essentially, we've laid the foundation for D.C. Stephenson, who's at the center of this epic tale. He rides north, and then tell us what happens in the middle of the book.
So he rises to power in Indiana, and then basically grows Indiana to be one of the largest states represented in the KKK.
The largest.
Then realizes, you know what? This Evans guy down in Atlanta, the leader of the national KKK.
Well, I think it was Texas.
Was it Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
I feel like the word Atlanta comes into play.
Atlanta was
point.
the guy that founded it.
Got it.
And then Evans and Stephenson ousted him.
So basically it was like, you know what? I deserve to be... This is my northern KKK, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan. Like, I built this. So then he kind of creates this gap between him and the rest of the KKK almost. And then I think at some point in what you're talking about, Ren, right in the middle, he realizes we need to get a member in every single spot in the Indiana government. Essentially,
every county.
So they're passing out ballots saying, "Hey, this is the way you're going to vote." And that's exactly what people do. And I think it even said every single spot in Indiana except for 2 went to a KKK member the last election that he was not in jail
Marion County.
And along the way, he's collecting $10 fees. And as I understand it, maybe I'm wrong here, but the only thing that the fees were going to run the KKK was to physically get the cloth uniforms.
No, that's a separate fee.
That separately.
He owned that
was a separate fee. So the
and he
member
also
fee,
got a skim on that.
So he's
making $4 per
becoming.
fee.
And then they had like quarterly dues. And
The
stuff.
book didn't say this, but he had to be one of the wealthiest men in America by the time he got.
It didn't say that, but it said
It gave you
million.
the number about how much he made though.
Yeah.
Over the time, and it was like $29 million or something.
What's interesting is the opening of the book spends a lot of time describing, and it's just downtown Indy. I mean, it's right here on the north side of Meridian.
Yeah.
There's
Irvington?
some
Butler.
epic things that have happened to that property since just evil, demonic things that have happened.
Really?
And that, yes. But it describes...
Well, there were some demonic things happening at that property while he was there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so he...
What, this is a mansion that's still there that you're
I don't
talking
know
of
if the
specifically?
actual one is still there,
Well,
but
it
the
burnt down.
property
He
burnt down. They rebuilt it. It was, that's for a different story.
Got
Okay, but because I don't know the details,
Yep.
and I don't want.
This is in Irvington, though. This is a neighborhood north side of Indianapolis near Butler University.
Ish, yeah. Yep. So, where was it going? Oh, so he's collecting all the opening of the book. They're describing almost like the scene in Scarface where he's risen to power and he's got bodyguards everywhere and he's got money that is just like falling out of closets kind of thing. That's how they start the book, and then they don't really get back up to that point except for when they start talking about the parties and the women that he's bringing through, and that's when Madge enters the picture right halfway through the book. But like, man.
And before we make the switch, I think it's important for like, at least for me, was just the legislative agenda that they put in there. And what was interesting is that you had all of this stuff about eugenics. They were literally like,
they're sterilizing people.
One of the foremost states
could
in
not
sterilizing
believe that.
people.
And what were they sterilizing them for?
So if you were found to not be completely with it, so if they had any reason to believe that you were mentally disabled, or if you were
70,000 people across the states ended up getting sterilized, and it was a race hygiene basically.
Yep.
So like, if they didn't want you to have children, like they just justified it.
Yeah.
Which, one of the reasons to be against abortion, by the way, is because it has its roots in eugenics specifically. But that was a big piece of it. And then you've got
during this period of time, you don't think they were like having abortions well before this?
Well, they were, but I'm talking about Planned Parenthood specifically.
Okay.
And then he wants to buy a college. They are getting into the schools and they're controlling the curriculum at the schools.
Yep.
And I just thought it was really, really interesting that like if you want to watch, like Abraham Lincoln said, the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of the government in the next.
Mm-hmm. And he's been right since.
He's dead on. Right. And then if you want to see what the philosophy of the schoolroom is going to be, look at the philosophy of the teachers' colleges and of the teachers' unions, because that's what controls it. And so what's interesting is that anybody who's trying to take over, who does a really good job of it and is playing the long game, it's always the schools.
So what a mind to view that. One hilarious thing was they were they said if evolution got taught in the schools, then people would think that black people were on the same level as white people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they wanted to only teach creation, which
is the exact opposite.
Which is actually, speaking of that, when it was just, there were some things where I'm like,
but you have to assume that someone of a different race is of the same species, which you don't.
It's the exact opposite.
Well, no,
dude.
if you're talking creation,
if everyone came from Adam.
I know, but
if everyone comes from Adam, it's one thing.
But they're saying black people, at the time they were saying black people are not people. That's how they got away with like saying creation.
You think they really believed they weren't of Adam?
Correct.
They were lesser people.
No, they were 3/5 of a person. Right? It was like,
that's what it was.
Legally, they were 3/5 of a person, and you would have to define them as
lesser people.
Not lesser people, lesser than people is the way I took it.
Well, they definitely
have to get away with that in order to teach creation.
Treated that way without doubt. I I never thought. So that makes it make a lot more sense of them literally believing.
Yeah, you define someone. You define, and it wasn't just black people. It was all races, and there was just different tiers of how much of a person they were, and that came from slavery.
Well, spoiler alert: one of his right hand guys ends up trying to prove that Jesus was not Jewish. As well. I mean, just what is the what's it called when you've already decided ahead of time, so you start with that in mind before you start trying to prove it? I don't know. That was clearly the case in many of these situations.
Cognitive dissonance or something?
Exactly what I was going to say. Yes, both of those things. Exactly.
All right, now we can make the switch if we want. But
hold on. Fun fact, chapter 6, the first black female millionaire.
I know.
And she had 300 or 3,000 workers.
It was a lot.
Something stupid
Was
high.
C.J. Walker?
C.J. Walker.
How on
Madam C.J.
Madam-
Walker.
Madam Walker.
Do not laugh at me. I literally almost said Harriet Tubman. And
You're laughing at you.
And I was like, that's
The one
not right.
black woman Brett's heard.
Gail. It was Gail.
It was Gail.
It was Gail.
That is bad.
Yes.
Let's see.
Chapter 6.
Hair products.
It says it served the 34,000 black residents in Indianapolis.
No, but how many employees did
she
she
employed
have?
3,000 people.
3,000.
Mostly
people.
women.
Making
and selling cosmetics.
How is this woman not in history books?
Madam C.J. Walker I had heard of.
I've heard
without
of
a
her
doubt.
before too.
I've never heard that story.
C.J.
let alone the
Walker
name.
Manufacturing Company, or Madam C.J. Walker
Chalk one up for the public schools. Got it. So they tried to buy universities. They tried to buy Valpo. They didn't.
Yeah, that was an insane
It
story.
was a crazy
So
story.
smart though. That's such a smart move, right? Is that Valpo was in dire straits and he said, "I'm going to buy this college."
Buy low.
Right?
And influence.
And Hiram Evans,
To your point,
wouldn't let him do it.
Yeah.
And that was the rift that happened between the two
what
of them.
was his reason for not letting him do it?
Probably
I think
because it was in
he did-
Indiana.
No, well, because it was Stephenson's idea.
Jealousy.
Because Stephenson had gained significantly too much power.
Yeah.
He gave him the title of this other imperial wizards, and then there's two imperial wizards, and they're essentially running two different sides of America, right? And Stephenson's got all this success. He's got all these people that are loyal to him, and the writing is on the wall for Evans. And if they go do this Valpo thing, then Indiana really does become the center of the KKK universe.
All right, I got one more thing to say before you transition into Mage, which is Mage or Madge? It's Madge.
Madge.
I think we need to transition to Madge because that's really what the whole second half of the book is about.
Yeah.
Independence Day in Kokomo. I was driving through Kokomo listening to chapter 10. And they're describing where they're burning crosses, and I'm looking around. I'm like, there could have been a burning cross literally right here. There could have been a lynching right here. And I wrote this note down, or I spoke it, so I don't know what was me and what was in the book. It was the averageness and the hopeless mediocrity that gave this town the hope as why it was the epicenter. I think that was what was in the book. This is what I wrote. This is why people strive for the next step in greatness, because they will get swept off their feet by the first thing that promises them value or significance, regardless of what that thing is. So think about Kokomo. Think about cornfield farmers and towns of people who don't have a church. They don't have significance outside of their own families. And if their families aren't tight, now they're looking for the first thing that gives them significance. In comes the KKK with a member card and a club. And they don't lead with hate. They lead with hope and excitement about what the future holds and money. And then they start to bring the hate in. And if you're not protected against that in your own mind, it's game over.
Yeah. If there's no baseline of a truth
or morality,
like if you don't have a baseline of truth, and then if you're not able to critically think through the messaging that you're being delivered, this can happen to you, and it does happen. It still happens. This is not something that's not.
I was going to say keyboard warriors, man.
This is something that was a problem that, Aristotle argued about, right? As he was like, hey, we've got to study rhetoric because people are going to use this rhetoric against us, and we've got to know what's coming so that we can discern what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a baseline of truth, and if you don't understand how you're going to be persuaded, then you will be persuaded.
And
which was it? Was it
that might be another reason why, as I'm reading this, I was just making all the different connections to the different rhetorical things that I was watching as the campaign went on, and just kind of like, yeah.
There's some messaging that is eerily close.
It's similar,
Eerily close,
and I think it's worth recognizing. Yeah.
Was it Aristotle or Socrates that didn't like persuasive speech?
Socrates.
It was Socrates, and he was led by Aristotle?
No, Socrates was Aristotle's teacher.
Okay, so Aristotle came in and he's like, hey, we can be persuasive. We can just
Socrates
be critical
was the
thinkers at the same time.
philosophizer.
Yeah,
right?
the philosophizer.
He's a philosopher.
I love the people that listen to this and just think you're an idiot when you say that.
He's a philosopher who didn't like rhetoric, who thought rhetoric was dangerous and didn't want to teach it.
But even that's deep. Break that down for me like I'm a third grader. What does that mean? Aristotle didn't like.
Not Aristotle, Socrates.
Socrates did not want you to influence others.
He didn't want anyone. He didn't like sales. He didn't like persuasive speech.
Yep.
He liked just free thinking and everyone do you.
Well, kind of. He wanted to ask the questions to get you to understand the greater truth. Mm-hmm. So he would have said that there's a truth, and that we're all going to arrive there, but he's going to continue to dive deeper and deeper to try to get you there. And it's annoyingly frustrating, and you get into these different circles and everything else.
But Socrates took it, he didn't completely veer off of the whole philosophy of asking questions, but he got a little bit more deeper into the fact that we can lead be a little bit more leading.
Aristotle did.
Yes. Gosh dang it.
You're
I'm
good.
confusing everybody.
No,
well,
man. I had a 50-50 shot.
Rhetoric was a dirty word. To be a rhetorician was a dirty word.
It's because they were mostly
early philosophers.
They were mostly like politicians that were doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Aristotle says no, and he's got this on rhetoric, right? The classic book. But if we're going to be good citizens, we have to understand how we're going to be persuaded.
And I think Socrates was doing the same thing. He was just doing it cleaner, less persuasive, but still influencing. He knew where he wanted them to get.
It's not a bad idea. It's just not practical.
Yeah. For sure. All right, so let's talk about Madge. So Madge realizes when
who's Madge?
The Grand Dragon has taken over, gotten everybody.
Madge is a good question.
Gotten everybody voted into office. She realizes, okay, if I don't make my position well known to this guy, D.C. Stephenson, I'm going to lose my job. So she immediately...
And my parents are going to lose their house.
Yes. Her dad was a postman, I believe.
Yeah, but he had taken out too big of a mortgage, basically.
Yeah. So she's like, I got to find a way to influence this. She goes, talks to him. I don't know if she builds up the importance of her role or what it is, but she knew what she was doing.
I don't think it was very hard for a woman,
correct,
that is a young woman, to get into.
So he's like, "Hey,
sphere.
I'm going to see what I can do." Stephenson immediately invites her to dinner. I think that first meeting, and she's like playing it off, push away,
flirty.
push away.
She was a teacher, and he was creating the health plan that was going to go into for the Department of Education.
Which, by the way,
was her in?
Was it pyramid? Was it the health?
I have no idea.
It was something that wasn't on the mic. At least I hope it wasn't. Got the managers and the so then they develop some of the relationship, but she keeps him, you would say, Marcus, kind of at arm's length away.
She's trying to, yeah.
Yes.
She wants to get the advantages of being within his sphere.
Yes.
Without having to do the deed. But she went on some dates with him and stuff like that. But
she humored him.
Yeah.
Then he sends.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
He sends a letter, telegram, something. Sends someone, and basically is like, "This is urgent. You need to come to my place now."
Yeah, he calls her house.
Yes.
And
This
she's
is
out on
8,
a different
9,
date.
10 o'clock.
Yeah, like a business thing, like
Yes.
making it sound like her role was
On a
vital.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think she gets picked up by one of his goons. Gets
No,
to
she
the.
just walks over. They lived
Oh,
close.
okay.
Do you want Marcus to tell it?
She gets there. It's a drunken party mess. It
Yeah.
is a rager.
No.
Yes.
Yes, it
No.
is. Yes, it is.
What is it?
He is. He's pissed drunk. He's got a red nose. He's drunk.
He's drunk, but nobody's there except for her and the two guys and Stephenson.
Yeah.
Really? I
Yeah,
thought he pulled
yes.
her to the garage, went to the apartment above the garage, away from the party.
No.
Well,
Okay.
I don't know that the details of this chapter.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
He wants her.
Yep.
Okay, and if you're listening to this with children, turn it off right now.
Yeah, and we don't need to go too deep into this. The only note I have for chapter 16 is this is the hardest chapter to get through.
It's really hard.
Any book that I've ever read.
It's really hard.
And so, like, the most important thing is over the course of the next 2 chapters, he brutally assaults, rapes, and psychologically messes with her
Yeah.
to the details that need to be known for the rest of the book. Is that it's so bad that over the course of 24 hours, she doesn't see a way out and decides to kill herself with poison.
Yes.
So she finds a way to get out.
Also important to note that part of the abusing was that he was literally like biting her and
Biting her
created and to the point where
tongue
she
and
had
body.
open wounds.
Open wounds.
Gets her on a train.
And that was a common thing for him.
Right.
Yes, this was not the first time we heard about him biting,
Even taking a
attempting
woman
rape.
up on a train to Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're gonna go to Chicago. He decides before they get to Chicago to get off because they don't. He
Can't cross state lines.
Cross state lines. He doesn't control those officials. Yeah. So then they're on their way back. This is all in. You said 24 hours.
Yeah.
She takes the poison.
Yep.
And
Takes
then
poison.
they're on their way back, and she decides, you know what? I do want to live.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she throws up a
something-
little bit. It's not working. She's very woozy, but then she's like, actually, I don't want to give him the satisfaction. I do want to live.
I think once she sees him worried,
it's better to live.
now it's better to live. She's like, oh my gosh, I might get this guy.
Mhm.
It's-
Maybe.
it's- I think-
I mean,
I saw that.
don't
I saw
know
that the
why
way it was written.
necessarily,
Like once he's visibly like, this girl can't die
Mm-hmm.
or I'm gonna have a scandal, she was like, I think it gave her a little bit of hope, a little bit of like,
But she asks for them to take him to the hospital.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for a doctor to see her.
yeah.
So a couple days pass. They finally say she's not going to die and we can't just hold her from her mom. So we're going to drop her off at her parents' house. And then
Which if you're him, why wouldn't you find a convenient way to dispose of her? That was
I think
Yeah, he probably should have just killed her.
right.
I think he thought that even that would be a line that would be hard to come back from, and as long as she's alive, he'll get off. Because I mean, he almost proved that to be right.
Did he almost
proved that to
you
be
think
right.
he just
And
felt invincible? Like there's
yeah,
no
like
way.
it doesn't matter. Like I don't need to do that.
I control everything.
I control everything. No one's gonna believe her anyway. But if they found a dead body, that might be hard to get out of. Is like literally like you can see the way it's written, where it's like this is what's going on. The psychology
Yeah.
of a killer, of a psychopath.
And to be clear, there was actually no reference in this entire book of him killing anyone.
True.
Other than probably lynching.
Well, here's what's
Yes,
interesting.
he's probably
But it doesn't
Around.
really even talk about that.
but he wasn't the one doing it.
Yeah,
like he was
exactly.
always influencing others.
Right.
Which is interesting. I'm just now remembering Sons of Anarchy and the guy that comes into town who's the head of the KKK. I wonder if he's loosely based off of this guy. But chapter 17 is what I wrote down. There's only 20 some chapters in the book, 25, 26, something like that. Chapter 17 is the first time in the entire book a hero is introduced and there's any hope at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed that. For 16 straight chapters, it is despair, sadness, the rise of a monster, and no hope in sight.
Well, no, is it O'Donnell? There was a guy that owned a newspaper out of Chicago.
Patrick something.
That you
was
thought for
skeptical.
a moment, well, he was hardcore, like, against it.
He came back home to Logansport.
Yeah.
But then he gets absolutely just in debt, trying to fight
also
it.
your boy in Muncie. Also your boy in Muncie, Dale, was fighting against it as well. But he was like thrown in prison and everything else.
Who would play him in the movie? Because they do a very vivid.
By the way, is the town of Dale named after him?
Daleville?
Or Daleville?
It's a great question.
I wondered that
Yeah,
while
we
I
can
was
look that
reading this.
We can look that up.
He deserves
We're
that
naked
guy,
tonight. We're without producer Nate.
But it's about the same.
It'd be really nice.
If
to
you're
know
wondering
the
why
answer to
this episode's going to be long, that's
he
why.
would be Googling something about
Pokemon.
something we were talking about 30 minutes
Grilling,
ago.
smoking.
So
He'd be figuring out
what I thought
went wrong with my battery.
the name of the Remy is
From
he's not the
DePaul University.
yeah, you were so upset.
Stud.
You were
This
so
hero
upset.
came from DePaul.
By the way, he is the hero.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, he's the hero in
Now
this.
he's not the one that goes over to Madge's house. It's another. He's the prosecutor.
No, it's Asa, whatever his name
Yes,
is.
the
Yeah.
lawyer. I
Their
think.
family lawyer.
Yes, their
yeah.
family lawyer. And he's like, dude, we got to get there's a chance we could use your comments in court even if you die. We got to get this down.
This is how it has to be written.
3,000 words, I think
It was a lot.
transcribe. And now, did you get the sense it was all written? It wasn't like recorded, right?
Guys,
this was written
this-
out. They're
this
writing
was
out
the
her
part.
testimony.
So what happened was that the lawyer wrote the testimony out.
Mm-hmm.
That because she had told them the whole story.
Yep.
So he wrote the testimony out, read it to her. She was able to correct him.
Yep.
Because
And then they
we
typed
haven't
it
finished the story yet, so no one knows what we're talking about. She is on her deathbed. The poison is taking place, and they can't.
It's gotten into her kidneys.
It's gotten
Should
into her
kill her
kidneys,
within, like, 7 days,
she's
and she
still
lasts-
openly bleeding. They can't it's in her body, and she's brutally like bruised and everything. Her body isn't fighting it.
And the infections that she got from
Right.
him attacking her had caused
It's all
her
Because
Compounding.
while
It's
this
all
is happening,
compounding.
he gets arrested, and this is over the course of what, days that this is happening.
Yeah,
So
I
this
think
is
so.
just days.
She
And
lives
at one-
29 days, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So
Yep.
29 days. So halfway through, a couple weeks in, they're like, "Oh, she might be good," and she's like, "Maybe I won't die." And then it takes a turn for the worse, and it's like, "No, she's definitely going to die." And she was strong enough to, during that time, have all these interviews for
because frankly, like she could have just gotten paid by him. That's the other thing. You like
just taking the pay, like the bribe,
she could have just taken money, I bet,
right?
and then or the family could have,
Yeah.
and it would have been done.
Yeah, it was bigger than that at that point. I mean, it was
I
personal.
understand
The mom-
because she was gonna die, and like they
the
were
way
like,
the book
well,
said
whatever,
it
but-
is normally a mother has, in times of distress, a mother has inhumane ability to stay strong for her child.
But when she saw him,
she saw her child, she wept.
dude, I will tell you that the one of the quotes that killed me was when she saw her dad, and her dad sat down next to her, and she was like, "Will you just rub my hair?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
No,
None of us have been in the position, but
I'm literally almost crying thinking about that.
Yeah. No. Well, you're thinking about your kids. I'm thinking about. I was going to comment on how they were like, we can't go to the police because they're
The police are
Klansmen.
under
Correct.
the yeah. There is
Could you
no
imagine
protection.
who
is
there's
our protector?
nowhere to go.
Yeah.
It is up to us. What the heck are we going to do? Like,
And we have to use the system where everybody except for this one prosecutor.
Oh, so this was what's interesting to me is I was pulling it. I remember exactly where I was pulling into Panera Bread when I'm thinking about this. And in the 20s, when you're trying to prove legitimacy, the way you specifically write something that is used in court from someone who has passed away is less legitimate. almost able to be thrown out because, and so, who is in the room during the thing or during a testimony is really important. Like almost to the point where there's certain people you don't want in there because then they could be used against testimony, and if they get it wrong, it's just going to be thrown out.
That's true.
So you have to be so smart about who is involved in the process.
Typically, the defense has got to have the ability to depose that witness.
Right. And if there's 10 people in the room, like kids and stuff, they'd be like, yeah, we're going to ask that 10-year-old, what did she say? Oh, I don't think she'd say that.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought about, because
there wasn't like 18-year-old.
And they didn't have a video camera where they could
have
get her dying declaration.
They didn't have age limits on who they could depose. And
Stephenson had a bunch of families that were part of the Klan that lived near Madge's family. Essentially just bold-faced lie.
Right.
If you had that many people back in that day willing to just lie for you, you could probably get away with a lot of things.
Yeah. You still could.
Because that's
today.
Like, if you had that many people willing to just lie for you completely, that's
yeah. I mean,
at what point are they lying because of how deep they're in with their own sins have committed?
I think they believe this is what's best for the future.
Was it just that? Was it just that?
Partly.
Or was it
blackmail.
Also sins that they have committed?
I think it intimated that most of the people that went and perjured themselves were blackmailed, and he always had people going around his parties taking pictures.
Bootleggers.
He always had people going around his party taking pictures. Like, he had dirt. They said that they found like mountains of dirt in southern Indiana.
The original Epstein
that he had.
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, Epstein's actually a really interesting analogy.
Epstein. Yeah.
Right? Is like,
that's why Brett said it.
We don't actually know how deep that goes. We have a general idea of how deep this went. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton we could talk about.
I think at this point, just
I just
notable
wrote that
things.
A few brave people standing up turned the tide.
Yeah,
and Remy and Dale and Madge and her parents. I mean, it talked about Remy going from 167 pounds or something like that to 129 over the course of the summer before this trial. He had to be worried about his family. He had to be worried about his own life.
I'm surprised that
I can't believe that he lived through it.
Yeah, I'm surprised he wasn't killed or his family wasn't attacked. Like, I'm surprised that they didn't use that angle.
Well, they said
they were losing power as Stephenson was in jail. They were slightly losing.
People were
power.
starting to distance themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's I was going to say this for the end, but since we're talking about it, had he not lost the trial, how long would the KKK have gone on in Indiana or the world?
That is really scary to think about.
What would have finally taken it down?
It's really scary to think about.
Well, because we think about something like Nazi Germany as like, that's
I mean, would a world war have happened to get this? I mean,
well, I don't know. What I know is that like the Nazis in Germany literally pointed to some of the laws that Indiana helped create on eugenics as part of
that was one decade later, correct? That was 10 years later.
Basically
after this.
It's just not even probably by the time the Nazis started to. Yeah, because the Olympics we read about were in 36.
Yep.
I mean, crap.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fun to think about.
No.
And the way, I think, like, big picture too, we've dealt with all these, you look at like 2020 and all of the race stuff that came up and everything else. And I think it's really easy for me as a millennial to say, guys, come on. Like, I don't look at anyone and view them as different, right? Or worse or less than or anything else. And so it can be tough for me to empathize in that way. But I can talk to whether it's like grandparents or people of other generations, and I hear things that they say that I think, man, that's racist.
And they didn't even occur to them?
It didn't occur to them at all. And so let's just say it's my grandparents' generation, right? My grandpa was born in the 20s. One of my grandpas was born in the 20s. One of them was born in the 40s, the early 40s, right? But there's things that they will say that I'm like, man, that's racist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's things that my parents' generation will say that are less so,
Mm-hmm.
but a little like,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't know that I would say that.
like, you know, but, you know, the generation right before my grandparents was this.
I think people
Was
think
exactly
racism.
this. It's just not that far removed.
Right. I think there's it's almost like a spectrum. Like there's racism is like, well, we're not hating these people and actually committing sins against them. And then it's like, well, we're not committing sins against them. And then it's like, well, we're not hating them. And like there's just levels at which we justify and it doesn't help that even comedians who are making fun of it are like making light of it. Like, I mean, even Shane Gillis has that joke where he's like, he actually says racism is a spectrum, and he makes it funny. He's like, you're not racist until, and he like says, he basically alludes it to being food. He's like, until a taco cuts you off on the highway, and so we laugh at that, and I can't believe you haven't brought up Chappelle yet, because like. Half of my knowledge of what the KKK was Chappelle skits.
Oh, jeez.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you kind of whatever is in front of you, and so, but also you can make the argument that Chappelle was doing it too as his own act of educating and
I also think that like when you hear at least Chappelle talk about that kind of stuff, he talks about it so intelligently, like, about why he
how
chose
dumb the hate is.
Or like he so it's like, oh wow, I have a newfound respect for that skit, seeing, but it still begs the question, like, is it helpful?
Is it helpful? That's and
is it helpful?
Yeah. And if you talk to him, which by the way, you know Chappelle lives like in a small town in Ohio.
Yeah.
Like my buddy just saw him the other day just walking on the street.
Yeah. He
specifically moved there, I think.
Well, he's from there as well. He's from DC. He's from DC.
His wife's from there, I think.
Wife might be from there. And but he gets offered this huge contract from Comedy Central and freaks out and then just resets everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good question. Is it helpful?
Yeah.
And it brings me back to like a Morgan Freeman clip I remember in 2020 got really, really popular, where some interviewer asked him about racism or about black versus white, whatever. And he's like, let's not talk about it.
I think it's about Black History Month.
His argument is like, let's
just stop talking about it. Let's just stop talking about it. And I don't know if post 2020 if he'd have the exact same answer, because
I don't know
he would
either.
get attacked for it or not, or because he feels differently about it now or not. But it was an interesting take.
I guess it's just helpful in terms of framing, where you're like, okay, I see where this frustration, angst, everything else is coming from. I understand why somebody could say it's institutional, right? Because I get it. Like I get that.
I think this is why I was arguing with you about him blatantly being narcissistic over just a hateful person, is because like the crimes that he committed, I feel like any one of the Klansmen could have just committed. Once you've okayed yourself with lynching and burning crosses and hanging out with your friends at night, killing people that you deem less people, and you're treating your women like property and all this stuff, anything's possible for that person. And I just felt like he was just, as the leader, just the picture perfect Klansman. And it's totally believable that literally any one of them could have done that. It's kind of where I was getting to, and why like him going down woke people up, and now it's like, oh, we're totally against any type of person like this.
So that the first meeting in Muncie after his trial started and all that came about, it was described as basically all the upper class standout members were now fading, and it was left to the people that they could get, that they didn't necessarily want as members of the KKK. It was interesting how quickly that fallout was. Was it because they didn't really realize what they were signing up for, and this made it like, oh my gosh,
Possibly.
this is
I thought it was interesting.
Well,
like-
I think so. I mean, I think that they thought that they were signing up for something that had higher ideals.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
well, it
this
wasn't
is
just
a
that.
Christian organization. This organization is based on Christian white Protestant values and prohibition and protecting women from this influx of black people and immigrants
drunk
and
all the
all of
time.
these things, and that's what we're here to do. And then you find out that this guy was doing all of the things that you're against. It's pretty easy to see how the whole thing could crumble.
Henry Ford was on the list to be the president of the Klan.
Yeah, dude.
Did not know that.
Oh wow.
That was left out of history class.
Yeah, I mean,
Model T was all I remember.
he definitely was helpful in disseminating KKK propaganda for sure.
Yeah.
Jeez, like Peter's-
Open anti-Semite. Like, did not know that.
I didn't either.
Should we go to quotes?
We probably should, yeah.
Quotes. Favorite quotes. Let's hear them. What?
That's good.
Good
transition, Brett.
that was
You're really
the-
good at this podcast.
That was the day I heard the most religion preached and the least practiced.
Yes.
That was Will Rogers after. But we didn't even get into the Democratic Convention 3-day figuring
There's
out
a
who.
lot of this book we didn't get into.
Yeah.
There's that. Yeah. The Noble. So chapter 19.
You should read this book if you're listening.
Chapter 19. They start talking about Noblesville and the pastor, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is the Noblesville pastor the hero? And then immediately it takes it takes a turn to Crazy Town, and he was saying that the people who oppose the Ku Klux Klan are the menace to America, and I was like, oh, did not see that coming.
Yeah. This is our boy Dale, the reporter
Muncie.
that's in Muncie. He said, I thought this was hilarious. Isn't it grand to be 100% American and wear your wife's nightie and your mother's goose cap around the county at night? He wrote in a front page column.
Mm-hmm.
How
Go
did he
get 'em.
stay alive?
Isn't it?
Go get him.
How did he stay alive?
I
Isn't
think
it
he
dandy?
barely stayed alive.
Well, what was crazy is all the journalists of note were so poor.
Yeah,
and
they were basically bankrupt.
They offered him, the Klan every once in a while liked what they wrote because they were like proud of whatever it was said. And so one of the stories is he offered him cash. He's like, this is good, keep it up. Gave him like $100, and he took it originally.
That was a month's salary, I believe.
Yeah,
is
he
what
took
said.
it because he was living on a can of beans for a couple days, and he felt so guilty about taking it. He returned the money and said, I'm not taking
What
it.
happened to journalism? Used to be a
He has to have
proper
pride.
profession.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. After his name was printed in Tolerance, that was by that other guy,
Yes.
the Pat O'Donnell, I think.
Yep.
Was printed in Tolerance. One defiant pastor in Indianapolis even oiled up a burlap cloth and lit a cross on the front lawn of his church. Damn right, he was a Klansman. Proud of it. If all the best people in the community belonged, as Daisy Barr had said, what could be so wrong with the Ku Klux Klan?
Mm-hmm.
And that is how they did it.
Mm-hmm. On the lighter side, I thought this was pretty funny. A woman sat next to Coolidge at dinner and had a bet with a friend that she could get him to say 3 words or more. And
I
at the
put this down
end of
too.
the dinner, he said, "You lose."
You lose.
So was Coolidge known to be a lame duck?
I couldn't
president?
tell. I couldn't tell if that was just like a story that was like a myth or if it was an actual thing.
I don't know. Like he was
the way
pretty,
that it was presented.
He
but
was
it's
pretty
funny.
clear in the beginning that everything was factual that was quoted.
He said Coolidge worked 4 hours a day as president of the free
I don't
world, quote unquote. It's wild.
Do you think most presidents work more than that?
Oh yeah, dude. Have you looked at? Actually, Trump's done a pretty great job of it, but most presidents' inauguration day to last day is
Oh yeah, they look.
wild. Like
Yeah,
Obama
yeah.
looked
Yeah,
young
Obama
man
was
to
the
old
biggest
man.
one
Yeah.
that
It
I
was,
remember
it was
seeing.
rough. I mean, Biden was already. Anyway, quote from Stephenson.
Biden went from old
Showed a
to
picture
dead.
to a box.
Did you see the Easter Bunny post today? The comparison of Trump welcoming the Easter Bunny and the Easter Bunny almost taking out Joe Biden is pretty good. I would never hurt you, even if you asked me to.
Yeah.
Stephenson to Madge randomly at dinner one night.
Yeah.
Like, who says something like that?
That guy.
How many red flags do you need?
Yeah, she was dancing with the devil for sure, literally. The Wizard of Indiana's Oz, who gave long speeches on the inferiority of other races and the superiority of white Protestants, was a creation that existed only on stage or in the pages of the Fiery Cross. The half-naked satyr, the rapist, the drunken flesh chewer, the gangster, and the political dictator was the true and the more brazen self.
That was some slam poetry right there. That was a good string.
I have like hidden gems mixed in with the quotes.
Good.
Because we're out of time anyway.
Yeah.
When Stephenson was in prison, he didn't have to smuggle cigars. They were delivered by the sheriff.
He owned everybody. During the trial, the prosecutor said about Stephenson, he was born in the state of Texas, letting the word linger like gas past at a church.
Mm-hmm.
So 12 middle-aged white men were chosen for the jury, which is not shocking. But most likely three of them were Klansmen.
No, three of them were
Were
definitely
confirmed Klansmen.
How did they do this?
How'd they only get 9? How'd they get 9 out of 12 to not be Klansmen? Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Because they got it moved to Noblesville.
Well, guys,
They had it moved to-
1/3.
I realize that, but I'm just saying, like, if you look at how much they were infiltrated to pull off a guilty
that
verdict.
was for Indiana. Noblesville, I believe, was one of the highest percentages. Like it was very improbable.
Yeah, especially at the time. That's why the chapter before they talk about the pastor being so aggressive. He was. I said, "Whoops!" Keep reading, Rem. There was 12,000 people at the largest gathering in the history of the town, and it was moved from Noblesville to Noblesville from Indianapolis, where the main preacher was the chaplain for the Klan.
Yeah,
that's who that guy was.
It had definitely infiltrated for sure. Several 100,000 Hoosiers had pledged fealty to and were effectively governed by a rapist, murderer, a drunk, and a dictator. He was not a man of God, but a fraud. He was no protector of women's virtue, but a violent predator. That pledged fealty to, there is a very disturbing part of this book where all of the people who were just elected are sitting around at dinner.
Except for Remy.
And they stand up and they say, I was, thank you to Stephenson, and they basically grovel at his feet.
Yeah.
And they literally pledge fealty to him.
And you think this is the part that's got imagery?
Remy doesn't.
Do you feel like this is one of the images where it's like similar to what you're seeing with Trump?
I think so. I think that there are similarities. And
is there anything that you've read since
noting.
in there where the author really is using this as like his rhetoric towards current?
No, I think he's just writing it, and then if you're going to make the connections, you can make the connections. But I
thought you said, Brett, you said at the end that you felt like there was distinctive like language around this is happening still.
No.
So I think here's the similarities to me. I think that Stephenson cared about Stephenson. I think that Trump cares about Trump. And I've always believed that. And I think that you see that in the rhetoric of both men.
I think the difference is Trump doesn't just care about Trump.
Well, you can disagree with me if you want.
I do
just
disagree.
think
I don't
true.
think Trump on the level that you're talking about is capable of doing the things that Stephenson did. I think to a level of
I agree.
I think that's worth noting because
I'm not saying that they're the same.
I think that people, when they're put in leadership positions, will justify, and sometimes they get in trouble because they believe that their way is the best for everyone, and so they can sometimes be blinded by that. And I think that happens sometimes with some of Trump's policies and the way he talks. And I'm glad he's not tweeting like he was 4 years ago, because I think that's where he really got into trouble. But there's no way you can make the same comparisons to what was potentially happening behind the scenes to what's happening behind the scenes in today's politics. I just don't see it. But I mean, I see the similarities in what you're saying. I just think I'm
not calling them the same. I'm saying that they use similar rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I also believe that they're both narcissists.
Interesting. Brett, who'd you vote for?
What year?
Yeah, I voted for Trump once, and that was this last time. The last quote I'll give you.
Brett voted for Hillary.
The last vote Charles Cox, former Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court, who joined this team pro bono to try to take him down. As a part of his arguments, he says, if I had my choice, I would have nothing to do with this case. And that really resonated with me. He was like, you know what? I'm old. I've been through all this. If it was my choice, I wouldn't do this. I would just sit at home peacefully, drink my coffee, and, look out at the landscape or whatever. And instead, I'm here because this is important.
Yeah.
And there needs to be times when we stand up and say, like, this is important or this is wrong.
Hidden gems. Any more, Rem?
That's all I got.
Got
Used
them all? Loved it. My one hidden gem I'll share.
The narrator on the Spotify version was great.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, fantastic.
The Catholic, did I get this right? The Catholic Church ended up buying the old KKK headquarters. Was that?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I didn't have it down.
Peace out. Marcus?
Prohibition was the first time that the Constitution was changed to take away a right. I thought that was interesting. The first jazz album recorded in Indiana.
Richmond, Indiana jazz.
And by the way, by a guy named Jelly Roll. And if you want to know why he called himself that, read the book. It's super inappropriate. But funny. It's funny. You guys remember what it was?
No.
Okay, I'll tell you in between. C.J. Walker, I had that one. Coolidge Down, I had that one. Irvington was named for the author of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, a piece of Indiana history I didn't know.
Not Legends of the Hidden Temple, because that was my second guess.
Interesting. Not quite the same, but I get it. Dean Martin escaped Klan violence in Ohio. His family escaped Klan violence because he was an Italian immigrant. And they escaped Klan violence in Ohio. And then, later on, he becomes the guy who sings the song and gets the girl.
I get it now. Rating time. I'm an 8.7. Second half was a 9 out of 9.
I don't want to, but I think it's a 9.
It's a 9 for me.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. Yeah. I think everybody should read it.
It's just tough. With that. It's tough. We're reading some really hard things. And there was nobody ate anybody in this book. And so,
that's not quite true.
Tried to.
I mean,
Ocean's 11 next.